Welcome back to this episode of To the Contrary podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes, and I am joined today by the hardest working man on Substack, Chris Cillizza. Chris, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to put that on. Do people still do business cards anymore? I was going to say I'm going to put that on my business card, but I haven't seen a business card in about 25 years. So,
I've never had a business card, and yet every time you go to a conference or something, people are asking, "Do you have a card?" And I go, "No, I don't have a card." It's just like,
I say the same thing. I'm like, you can text me.
Yeah, no, it's not that hard. Okay, so there's so much I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about Elon Musk flip-flopping on the third party, which is interesting. Why you think the Epstein file story is not going away. I want to bounce off some thoughts about Gavin Newsom and whether you think that he is a bright, shiny object or the real thing. But I actually want to start with something you wrote the other day.
Okay.
About your rubber band theory of democracy, and I brought along a prop just so you know.
I love it. In the finest tradition of TV talkers everywhere, a prop.
Right. Well, now you see, this is one of those cases where I'm not sure that we agree, but I hope you are right. Okay, so could you lay out your theory about how democracy is like a rubber band, and then I will give you the counter narrative.
Yes,
which
totally.
I hope is wrong.
I always say to people, like, look, I don't know that this is right. This is my working theory. So one of the questions I get the most from people who subscribe and from people who don't subscribe, but have thoughts, is why are you so naive about Donald Trump destroying democracy? The evidence is all around you. And I've kind of responded, in comment sections and like one-offs, but I've never really put together all of my thoughts in one place. And I wanted to do that so that when people ask in the future, I can say, look, I've actually written about this. Here it is. So the rubber band thing. So if you think of American democracy as a rubber band, yes, thank you. Every president has stretched it in different ways. Mostly, I would say, in the expansion of executive power. They all stretch it in different ways. Now, most of them stretch it moderately and not for that long. Even if it's 4 or 8 years, they stretch it. I mean, look, I am old enough to remember how George W. Bush was, in liberals' mind, a dictator, and you know what I mean? Like, he did stretch it in certain ways, right? I remember the firing of the U.S. attorneys. I mean, it was like a gigantic thing, and that was stretching it.
In retrospect.
Oh, I know, exactly. Yeah. I still remember this, the Cindy Sheehan camping out at the Crawford Ranch to protest Trump, and how she became in that summer like this giant figure guy. Now it's like good old George W. Bush.
Yeah, I know.
He's just painting at his home in Dallas. Okay, so every president stretches it in some ways. What we have seen broadly across decades and even centuries is that the rubber band mostly, because it's rubber, it mostly returns to its original shape.
It's right? Resilient.
It's hard to, yes, it is resilient like democracy. Okay. I feel like Shrek explaining how ogres are like onions in those movies. Okay. So there is no question, I think, among any thinking person, that Donald Trump, both in his first term and in the first 6.5, 7 months of his second term, is stretching the rubber band more aggressively and in directions that we have never seen it stretched before. So there are 3 basic conclusions if you agree to that central premise. 1, the rubber band is resilient and it will return to its normal form afterward. Doesn't matter. Right. 2, the rubber band which is democracy, just to remind people, is going to snap. And when it snaps in two, everybody knows this. If you break a rubber band, you can't just put it back. You can glue it, but you can't put it back together. It is fundamentally broken. Or 3, he will stretch the rubber band so hard and so long that the rubber band will not break, but the rubber band will not return to its original form. It will be misshapen in ways that we may not be totally able to predict, but we can predict its misshapenness. And we kind of have to figure out, okay, what does it look like? Is it an egg? Does it look like a rectangle? Whatever. It doesn't look like a circle anymore, basically. I am a believer in option 3. I don't think it's going to return to its original form. I think that's very unlikely given what he's done and given what we know about politicians. They, I don't think the next president is going to give back the executive power Donald Trump has asserted. I don't think, and I think this is where we disagree, I don't think he is likely to break the rubber band, not because he is opposed to breaking the rubber band, or he even considers breaking the rubber band, but because there's enough strength in our institutions, which I admit have not decorated themselves in glory, but there's enough strength in our institutions, and his term is not long enough that he can break it. And so therefore, I'm going with 3. It will be misshapen. It will not return to its normal form, normal quotes, but it will not break. That's the short-ish version of what I wrote. If people want the whole thing, I recommend you read it. It's not super long, but tell me why I'm wrong.
Here's my concern. Well, and I'm hoping, and I kind of expect that you are right. However, I'm most concerned about option number 4. Which is that Donald Trump will stretch it, but now people who are not watching on YouTube,
in this metaphor.
The scissors is of course Donald Trump, and then it's like the rubber band is gone, and in part because so the institutions have been resilient, and I do wonder whether in fact we have lacked imagination or been naive about the resilience of our institutions, because there's a lot of evidence that they are not that resilient, that all of the guardrails that we counted on have fallen, and they've fallen because they were weak and they were hollow. I mean, part of this is Donald Trump aggressively, asserting the powers of the imperial presidency. But the flip side of this is finding out how hollow many of those norms, institutions, and guardrails are. And
I totally agree with that.
We're using the term democracy, and I think let's just stipulate that that's just kind of shorthand for a lot of other things, including the rule of law, the Constitution, basic norms about truth and equality before the law, all of those things that we're sort of putting in this, because the reality is that democracy can be quite illiberal. I mean, democracy itself. I think we use the term, but it feels as if our political culture has been changed almost beyond recognition. And in terms of the information flow, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and the aggressiveness of our politics, my fear is that everything keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and that the argument that we must destroy the village to save the village will become dominant in American politics.
We have to burn Gotham down to return Gotham to its roots. Totally.
Exactly.
We
don't know.
No, we don't. And the one thing that, and this is why I think although we don't agree on everything, we find common purpose, at least on my end towards you, is the one thing that I do struggle with is I do think there is an industry that has grown up around telling you we absolutely know how this all ends and it's bad and it's fascism. And it's like, I just, how would someone know that? Like, I wonder about
history,
that. Now,
the directional arrow of events,
the directional arrow
the
of
parallels,
events is
the echoes.
True. I guess I think you are 100%. What I was thinking about when you were talking is one of the things I think is hilarious to me. Let's assume that Donald Trump is not on the ballot in 2028. I know we can have a whole episode on that, but let's assume he's not. I always think it's hilarious when people say to me, like, and I know Trump talks him up, but when people are like, oh, Marco Rubio or Josh Hawley, I'm like, none of those people are going to be the nominee unless you believe that politics is going to. That is, people who say that believe that the rubber band is going to revert back to its original form. I think that Tucker Carlson has a better chance of being the Republican nominee than Marco Rubio does. I mean, like,
I think it's
so I sort of agree with you
and you're
on
not
that.
saying that. the rubber band doesn't return. We're not going to have a Republican convention at which Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are welcomed back with open arms. This is not going to happen.
People are like, what about Nikki Haley? I'm like, what that you've seen in the last decade would make you think that that in 2028 Republican voters, after electing Donald Trump twice, are going to say, yeah, that's definitely what we want. Like so I agree with you on that. Like, I do think we are through the looking glass there. Another thing I would say about the whole the rubber band thing is, I don't think that option one. I think that's the least likely of those options. That we go back to some semblance of like normal, where like Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and Mitt Romney are the face of the Republican Party, or their modern day equivalents. So I think I would say option 3. Stretched out but not broken, then option 2, then option 1. Now your option 4, you've really thrown me for a loop. My mind, the American mind cannot comprehend.
For people who are just listening, I had the scissors. I cut it. I cut it.
I don't know, Charlie. I vacillate between people who say your naivete is massive, and like I don't think Donald Trump is good for democracy. I think he's demonstrably bad for democracy. I think he is fundamentally amoral. And I think that's a giant problem in any leader. I guess I still put enough faith in independent media, I was going to say Congress, although they have done nothing. The Supreme Court. Yeah. I don't think the Supreme Court, our friend Steve Vladeck, who's at Georgetown now, who was at UT Austin, he writes a great Substack that lots and lots of people follow. He has said, like, the idea that the Supreme Court has caved and is proven that it's at Trump's beck and call is overstated. He is now, he is not saying that the Supreme Court doesn't.
I agree with this, by the way.
Okay, like, I just think this idea that, like, well, they'll just do whatever he says. Like, I'm not saying they haven't done things that he wants, but I also don't think there's proof that, like, Amy Coney Barrett in particular, in John Roberts, are just going to do whatever. If Donald Trump says, well, I'm going to run again in 2028, that they'll be like, okay, Constitution doesn't matter.
Well, that'll be a test. I mean, that'll be a red line, won't it? I mean, if he wants to run, he's allowed to do it.
And he may push to it.
Yeah. So Jack Goldsmith, who teaches at Harvard, is former head of the Office of Legal Counsel, was at a forum over the weekend, and he made the same point. He said, we don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do yet. A lot of these things are overstated. So I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole of history and philosophy here, but I will say I understand what you're talking about, the industry of people running around with their hair on fire. On the other hand, I do think that it is legitimate to make the warnings because, quite frankly, Donald Trump almost on a daily basis does something that if you or I would have predicted it last August, we would have been accused of absolutely out of control Trump derangement syndrome. And there are models of authoritarianism. There are authoritarian playbooks, and some of the things come right out of it. And, I have to say that I spend a lot of time, I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time reading history these days. And one of the reasons I was thinking, what it is about reading history, and I think it's partially because that I'm searching for eras and people who were more fucked up than we are, and yet somehow came out of it, or
find it reassuring.
Find it reassuring. But also, I think your question about predicting. I mean, I think it's legitimate to say this is authoritarian, this is fascist-like, but to predict what's going to happen, nobody actually knows. So the question, what will happen, is the wrong question. The right question is, what will we do? What is our role now? I cannot control the future. I cannot predict the future. Right. All I can do is say, how do I react to these things? Do I just shrug my shoulders, roll my eyes, or do I say, this is a grave threat to American, the constitutional republic that we have taken for granted for so long. So again, I think that's very fair. And I hope that people do understand that at some point. I also think that it's important, and I know that you struggle with this as well. One of the things that I worry about is the cycle of people retreating into bubbles that are becoming more and more, becoming these hermetically sealed alternative reality silos. And I know that there are listeners of this who are going to hate it when I say that both sides are doing this. And one of the most dangerous things right now, if you actually believe that democracy at risk, is to retreat into one of these hermetically sealed silos. because then you will tell yourself stories, or you will cut yourself off from the kind of critique that you need if you're ever going to counter it. And so I do worry that, on the left, I wrote my Substack newsletter to the contrary about, the Democrats and their bright, shiny objects going off and saying, oh, look at this person, Well,
I read it.
Many of those bright and shiny objects would not be electable in any swing district in America. They are not the majority makers.
And I love the point that you made. I say this, any smart Democratic strategist who I've talked to in the last 6 months all say the same thing. The most important thing, if you believe democracy is in peril, if you believe Donald Trump has, and it seems to me he does, have authoritarian leanings,
right?
The most important thing is not anything other than you have to win back control of either the House or Senate in 2026. There's just no, and you make that point high up in that piece. Like,
yes,
you can't, and the way that you win elections is not, but I always say you have to, it's realpolitik. You have to deal not with what you think people should care about, but what people do care about, right? Like, This was the mistake I always thought Biden was making. And I thought he would have, I think you and I have talked about this, but I always thought he was going to lose anyway before the debate, because Joe Biden believed, and I think there's plenty of evidence to back this up, January 6th being a primary one, that Donald Trump is not fundamentally interested in sort of the project of American democracy. Donald Trump is interested in what's good for Donald Trump. And that therefore democracy was on the ballot. And that was the most important thing. Now, again, I think that that's really important. And I don't think we should memory hold January 6th. The problem is, who didn't really care? Independent and swing voters. So it's like, do you want to win and be able to, in this case, put some hurdles in Donald Trump's way, do some level of oversight that you could do if you controlled the House? Or do you want to win the quote unquote moral argument and not have any control? And I think a lot of times there are too many Democrats who want to feel good that they are doing the quote unquote right thing or on the right side of history, but don't have any control. And politics is about power. If you're in the minority, as Democrats are across Washington, in governorships across the country, in state legislatures across the country, we're seeing this with redistricting, you don't get to make the rules. So until you have some power, that to me is the fundamental thing. And I love that you put that, you forefronted that, because I think a lot of people lose that.
Right.
Because it's the most important thing.
Well, and also, I mean, part of it is, I mean, I understand the attraction of, people like AOC and Jasmine Crockett, but the Democrats do have a pretty good bench of smart Democrats who win elections in deep red states. So I guess the question would be, why is Andy Beshear, who is in Kentucky and is the governor and has a 65% approval rating? Why is Abigail Spanberger, who is about to become the governor of Virginia? Why is Alyssa Slotkin, who won in Michigan when Trump was winning? Why are these not the rock stars? Why are we not seeing them on the cover of Time magazine? And why are, the Atlantic not running articles saying, a Democrat for the era of Trump? These are the people who actually can make majorities, who will actually win elections. And yet the bright, shiny object is somebody who is in a gerrymandered 85% Democratic district
who never
is on
lose.
TikTok, who could not win in any swing district in America. And, cancel me if you don't like that. But you do have,
Well, if you think that AOC, if you think that Zohran Mamdani's messaging would work in Kentucky, I mean, it just wouldn't. We could argue whether it should be, or those people are voting against their economic interests. We could have a whole political philosophy class on it, but it wouldn't. I have said that if Democrats are interested in winning, that they should do everything that they can. You can't make him the nominee, but do everything they can to listen to Andy Beshear as much as possible. And they're not really. And I do think it's like, why I think I thought about this, Charlie. I wonder what you think about this. It's like, I actually think I wrote this down. I don't know if you can see this. I write my ideas down on like note cards. And so
I have the same thing.
Wrote Gavin Newsom's very good 2025. Now, I swear to you, I wrote this before the last 48 hours where everyone is saying Gavin Newsom's having such a great 2025. And I, of course, haven't written it yet. So there's that.
All right. But, well, yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think it's a head versus heart thing. I get why I laugh at Gavin Newsom's trolling of Trump on Twitter. It's funny. I mean, I laugh at Donald Trump's tweets where he's like, your favorite president, me. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Like, it's funny. It's good because it makes you think like, oh my gosh, like Trump, just so ridiculous. I get all of that stuff. And yet, like, it is hard for me to believe that another San Francisco Democrat, and I think Gavin Newsom is super talented, actually, and I think he has done a lot of good things this year in terms of 2028. But it's hard for me to believe that that is the solution to what ails Democrats.
Okay, so you've gone where I wanted to go as a segue, because when I'm talking about bright shiny objects, I punted on this. I'm actually way behind the curve because I said, so the big question is Gavin Newsom just a bright shiny object, scratching the Democrats' id, or is he the real thing? Because right now he is about the only guy who is at the level. I mean, we won't say at the level of Trump, because of course that's hard,
impossible.
To be giving the Democrats what they want. This is the guy who's fighting. He's funny. He's entertaining. And I'll tell you, I was asked about this on a Canadian Sirius XM radio show this morning, and I also headed and I said, get back to me after November if he has this referendum on the ballot to re-gerrymander California. If he loses that referendum, well, I think it's poof.
It's a gigantic bet he's making. Gigantic.
Yeah.
I am sort of intrigued that he did. I actually, from just a purely political standpoint, I actually admire the balls to try it.
Yeah.
Because there is at least the possibility he loses. And if he loses, the shine, no, it doesn't mean he can't run for president, but my gosh, the shine would be off that star, right?
Big time.
So he has to, at some level, have calculated that like, okay, if we win, I look like the guy who countered Trump, and it's good for Democrats, and I get momentum. But if I lose, so I kind of admire, because I think so many politicians, Kamala Harris clearly fell into this category.
Too safe.
They're so risk averse. You gotta take some swings. My God, Donald Trump took 1,000 swings that I would have said are inadvisable.
Yeah.
And I think if you're the Democratic Party, you have to take a few swings. Like you gotta try some stuff other people aren't trying. The Newsom thing is odd because I feel like there's been two stages of Gavin Newsom 2028 already this year.
Right.
Stage one, we shouldn't have trans girls in girls sports. Also stage one. Hey, look at me. I started a podcast where I'm interviewing Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. Well, you don't hear a lot about that podcast anymore, do you? No. Stage two, Newsom. LA, ICE protests, Donald Trump is, martial law, calling up the National Guard. He's the foil and the guy willing to fight Donald Trump, the Twitter stuff. It's like all of a sudden the Gavin Newsom moving to the middle is kind of out the window, and the Gavin Newsom, I will fight like hell and stick it to Trump in ways that you will like is here. So we've already had like two. I'm like, well, which iteration of Gavin Newsom is it? Because it's August, and we've already had two. He's clearly trying things out for 2028, and I think this has been the more successful version. This more recent,
rather dramatically more successful.
But is it more successful in winning him a nomination, though, Charlie, or in winning the presidency? Winning a nomination is one thing.
Two different things. Yes, exactly. And actually, I was talking to somebody, a pretty smart guy the other day because I was saying, that I how much success Newsom was having, getting attention and, being able to fight back. He's the first Democrat that's kind of figured out that formula. And he said Gavin Newsom would be this is what he said, Gavin Newsom would be a terrible candidate for some of the reasons that you sort of hinted at, another, California Democrat, somebody from, that background. This is exactly what Republicans want to run against. So again, I am agnostic on this. I've said before, I'm a Gavin Newsom skeptic, but we'll have to see. Okay, so
one quick other thing about Newsom is on the San Francisco, California point. I will admit that during the 2024 campaign, I kind of rolled my eyes when Trump would I shouldn't have, because he's been right a lot with this stuff, but I would roll my eyes when at these rallies he'd be like, "Comrade Kamala." I'd be like, this is so stupid. Like, she's clearly not a communist. I mean, you can think that she's like too liberal or whatever, but like, and yet I really do think I've read a bunch of after action reports and focus groups and studies, and the fact that she was from California really, and from San Francisco, had, political base in San Francisco, really did for a lot of people in the country. That was like a sellable thing, that she was she's from California. She must be a communist. And so it's like, I don't think that about people from California, but I'm also not the person who decides elections, right? And so I do think, I think Newsom has to figure out a way. Our kind of built-in biases are very hard to disrupt. And I think there is a bias in the middle of the country about California.
Well, let's be honest about it, since we're going there. I mean, there's a built-in bias. She was a black woman from California.
Right now he's a white guy.
Right. But I mean, there are people
But he is also the guy who was marrying gay people before anybody. I mean, he was literally doing the gay marriage ceremonies. If you don't think that will come up, I know that people will say, "Oh, no one cares about that." There are people who still don't want that, and who are culturally conservative. And I just wonder with that resume whether it works.
Yeah, and I think it's a legitimate question. There are people who want to make it either or. That Kamala Harris went down because she was a woman. Kamala Harris went down because she was a black woman, or because all of these are factors, and part of it codes. How does it code? It reads all of these things that they were able to project, often with, let's just say, with bad faith. So speaking of things that we haven't talked about, and speaking of like people, I actually remember when you mentioned Comrade Kamala, I remember this one Twitter meme that Elon Musk was putting out. She's actually showing her dressed up as Stalin, which I thought was absurd, but going in. So Elon Musk, we haven't heard from Elon Musk lately, but you had an interesting piece today about his flip-flop. I had actually missed that story that Elon Musk is now basically saying, never mind on the third party.
I will say, and I know people on the left hate Rupert Murdoch and he's too involved and blah, blah. I will say, I don't pay for a huge number of legacy media subscriptions. I pay for a Wall Street Journal subscriction because I think they have done a lot of really good work. Trump and Epstein, but they on Biden and questions about him. So anyway, yes, there's a piece in the Wall Street Journal today that basically says Elon Musk, a month after too much ado and hype, announcing that he was starting the America Party and how the two parties were broken and well, now he's focused on his business and he doesn't want to get crosswise with JD Vance, and he actually might give money to JD Vance. I mean, it's both utterly predictable and appalling at the same time. Like, of course, because you know what? Elon Musk is a rich guy who wants to get richer, and he's not going to, the Democratic Party is lost to him now because of what he did in 2024 and then with Doge.
Totally.
The Republican Party, I know he fought with Trump, but like there's still a potential home for him there. He's not going to nix the one avenue he will have to have a direct line to the White House. There's no way. Why the hell would he do it? Because the America Party is not electing the president in 2028, no matter how much money he puts into it. So it's like, it's so predictable. The idea that we broadly fell for a third party, it really is Charlie Brown, Lucy, and the football all over again. Every time somebody tells me like, hey, we're forming this group, but this time it's going to really work. It's a third party. Have you seen the number of people? Independent is the fastest growing. Yeah, I know all those things, and it's not going to work. And Elon just says stuff. He and Trump have that in common. They pop off on social media and then they don't back it up. This is that.
All right. However, so since we talked about Elon Musk popping off on social media, the one thing that he did do successfully, I mean, Doge was kind of a fraud. This was kind of a, clusterfuck. But the one thing that the one fuse that he lit was the Epstein files, wasn't it?
I know he did.
Where
now deleted Twitter.
Yes,
tweet,
but that was his bomb. Now to drop the big bomb, that Trump is in the Epstein files. Yep. And everything that's happened since then involving that seems to have flowed from all of that. So if you want to talk about one pivotal moment. Now, you and I have had this, we've been talking for about 30 minutes now. We have not mentioned the Epstein files. The Epstein files is not in the news. We have a lot of Ukraine stories. We have a lot of DC occupation stories. We may go to war with Venezuela by the time this podcast airs. Who knows?
We need to retake the Panama Canal. Don't forget that, Charlie.
Well, and there's Greenland. Greenland is still out there, right?
Greenland is baiting us constantly. They're asking for it in a lot of ways.
Well, you could certainly imagine Donald Trump being up there. So they bought Alaska, and everybody thinks that this was a good idea. We bought Alaska from Russia. Why can't I be the guy that buys Greenland? But let's talk about the Epstein files, because it is still August. Yep. Nothing's actually happening. Is that story going away? You've argued it is not. Tell me about that.
So, yeah, I don't think so. And the reason why is because there's still things that I think are almost certain to happen in the future that will provide it more fuel. I mean, like, look, you always think of this just like a fire. Like, that's how these things work. Without right. tinder and oxygen, it goes away eventually. The problem for Trump is, so when I say there are things out there that I think will provide it oxygen, number one, Jim Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, against his will, because in a subcommittee vote, some renegade Republicans joined with Democrats that forced Comer to subpoena these files from the Department of Justice. DOJ is now saying that they will begin transferring at least some of the Epstein files to the House Oversight Committee starting Friday. Okay, so
we don't know what that is, though.
One. Yeah. We don't know what it is, but that is one big piece of oxygen. What is it? If they're giving it to the House Oversight Committee, why aren't they releasing it publicly? Right? That whole thing. And I just don't think that wraps up neatly. The other thing, two other things. One other is that I do think this discharge petition, basically this end run to get a vote on the floor on releasing the Epstein files by Tom Massey, Republican of Kentucky, and Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, is going to succeed. I think it is going to get to 818 votes. I don't think Tom Massey gives a shit about sort of, the House leadership frowning on this. You know what I mean? I think he's already done enough to get himself crossways with this. So I think there will be a vote. Now, just because Congress votes and says they should release the Epstein files doesn't mean they're going to release the Epstein files. But my point is like, it will fuel the story. And then the last thing, and I think this kind of got overlooked. It happened right as they were trying to get out of town. But this is not the only poll that showed this, but the Washington Post released a poll that showed that 67% of people strongly support the release of the Epstein files, and another 19% somewhat support it. So now you have, it's 75, 80% of people. And if you look at it, it's the weirdest thing that you never see anymore. Breakdown by party, Republican, Democrat, Independent. 80% across all of those support the release of the Epstein files. It's hard when 80% of the public wants something. I don't think they're ever going to release all the Epstein files, but they gotta give them something. Is it Pam Bondi resigning? Is it Kash Patel resigning? Is it Pam Bondi and Kash Patel doing a dual press conference where they try to answer all the questions? Is it them releasing some stuff? Is it a Ghislaine Maxwell pardon where she says Donald Trump was involved? My point is, there are ways that this could end not horribly for Donald Trump, but I just don't think it's going to end without these oxygen feeders giving that fire more oxygen. And that's why I think it sticks around. I don't think we come back from the congressional recess and it disappears. I agree. Do you have a different take?
I agree with you completely. No, I do not have I do not have a different take. And also because of the numbers you just cited, this is a different kind of issue. I mean, I'm old enough to remember trying to explain the Whitewater scandal to people in the middle of the 1990s.
It's a real estate transaction.
No. Okay, so fast forward to this. People get this. People understand this. There are still victims. There are still survivors. They are speaking out. There are platforms. You can't just simply say it's a hoax when you have these criminal cases, when you have hundreds, if not thousands, of victims here. The Ghislaine Maxwell, possibility of a pardon, I think, was an indication of. It feels almost a little bit like flop sweat on Trump's part.
I mean, I think politically it's idiotic. I mean, which doesn't mean he won't do it. I mean, tariffs are idiotic politically, and he continues to push on that front. But it doesn't mean he won't do it. But it's beyond stupid. I mean, it couldn't make you look more guilty. I don't know if he's guilty of anything or not. But I mean, doing that suggests to me that okay, we told her what we want her to say. She's agreed to it. We're going to pardon her, and she's going to come on and say, Donald Trump never did anything. Donald Trump is a saint.
Ugly, ugly, ugly. Okay, so here's something else that did not happen, though. My understanding was that the Republican plan was to spend the summer going back home and selling all the great things in the big, beautiful bill, telling people all the goodies. I cannot remember the last time anybody even mentioned it. So, the distractions to the distractions to the distractions basically completely muted any selling of the big, beautiful bill, which remains underwater.
This may be a semi-controversial take because I know the Epstein thing drives base energy on the Democratic side and splits the base on the Republican side. So I understand why Democrats think it's a good issue. And I'm not saying it's a bad issue. In my mind, if I were Democrats and we come back, in after Labor Day, man, I would spend every day beating the shit out of the big, beautiful bill and the Medicaid stuff that's in there and the tax stuff that's in there. Because I think people are like, Epstein is a shitbag. He clearly hung out with, at a minimum, so a lot of high-profile people, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. They were clearly friendly. Now, that doesn't implicate them, but I think people all agree on that and they want to know more about it. To me, I still return to the Carville, it's the economy stupid thing. This bill, to your point, is not popular. It is vast. There is stuff in there that members of Congress they've admitted as much, don't know what was in there. I think you pick that thing apart if you're a Democrat and you say, look, this isn't about Donald Trump. I don't care if you like Donald Trump, you hate him. I don't care if you think Donald Trump is Hitler, if you think he's, the greatest president since Abe Lincoln. This is his signature legislation that a Republican-controlled House and Senate rubber stamped, effectively. Yeah. Let's look at what's in it. And you peel out the things that are in it. And again, to your point, and I think this is critically important, because every political fight, it matters the ground on which you're fighting and where you start from. The bill is unpopular. It's really hard to make something that is gigantic and unpopular with the public popular. Ask Barack Obama in the 2010 election about Obamacare. Exactly. I would focus much more of my time and money, ad-wise and rhetoric-wise, on what's wrong with the one big beautiful bill as opposed to Epstein. To me, Epstein is cherry on top stuff, not the sundae you build a campaign on.
Well, I agree with that completely, but also I think Epstein will have a life of its own. So in terms of what do you need to promote? You don't need Epstein's going to be circling out there. Right. You don't need to do. Now, the other thing is, and I really am always skeptical when I hear other people do this anecdotal thing. Because it's so limited, but it is interesting how often in private conversations I have heard people talk about, have you noticed the price of groceries?
Yep.
Lately. Have you seen what's been happening? This was going back to our discussion of bubbles and hermetically sealed. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest mistakes that Democrats and some never-Trumpers made was when they tried to pretend that inflation was not a real issue, that they were ignoring the lived experience.
Because he's destroying democracy.
Yeah, whatever. But it is interesting to me that the inflation issue is percolating out there. There's indication that it is getting worse. We have not had the full impact of the tariffs yet. And you want to talk about one of the great ironies of
go ahead.
He ran on this fucking thing.
Expressly on this. Mm-hmm. If you look, I always remind people this. Go and look at the 2024 exit poll. In the 2024 exit poll, voters who rank the economy as the most important issue, which is about a third of all voters. They give them 4 options typically. Donald Trump won those voters who said the state of the economy was the most important thing in deciding their vote, 81% to 18% over Kamala Harris.
Really?
Yes. Isn't that stunning?
That is stunning.
I went and checked it. 81-18. He wins the election because of that. His promise was Biden doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Kamala Harris doesn't know what the hell they're doing. I'm a business guy. I fixed and made the greatest economy ever once. I'll do it again. Okay. Well, if he doesn't do that by 2026, it seems to me a slam dunk to just be like, what the guy said, you voted for him for this reason. And at best, he's fought it to basically a draw at best. And let's see what 2026 holds, because I'm with you. I mean, I just think the tariffs are just colossally stupid politically. Right. But I think that's the ground you fight on. And I think it's, Democrats often, again, this goes back to the what do you think voters should care about versus meeting voters where they are and what they do care about.
And also,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you're exactly right. And I'm trying to remember this thing from the Progressive Policy Institute. I think I quoted it in my newsletter after their after action report, that when they asked voters, what do you think Democrats care about the most? They didn't think they cared about the economy. They did, but they were saying the number one issue for Democrats will be progressive social issues like trans rights and everything.
Trans stuff.
So exactly. So this was one of those key moments where Democrats have to convince people that they respect them, that they're listening to them, and that they care about the same things that they care about, as opposed to what the think tank elites might be talking about. No, I agree completely. And by the way, one of the things I really like about your Substack newsletter is when you break down various things that Donald Trump says. Just briefly,
just so
do a little
ridiculous.
You do like a forensic analysis of what Donald Trump says, as opposed to just letting it flow over our heads.
I think it is remarkable, because one of the things about him is he does talk more publicly than any modern president.
Right.
Like much more than Biden, obviously, and we can debate about the quality of what he says and does he actually answer questions. But I'm just saying, from just a pure words point of view, he's constantly calling into Fox News. He's doing Mark Levin's podcast. He's talking for 35 minutes in the Oval Office at something that's ostensibly a gold star signing ceremony or something and I just think a fair amount of it is repetitive. He does say a lot of the same stuff, but I also think I'll give you one example, Charlie. I thought this was totally fascinating. So he calls into Fox and Friends on Tuesday morning. Totally friendly environment, right? I mean, it's like Charlie Kirk and Ainsley Earhart. I mean, these are not people this is not even Brett Baer who will ask him actual real questions. And so he's going and he's talking, and they're asking him about you've done such a great job, settling all these wars and why do you want to end the war between Ukraine and Russia so much? And he says, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says I want to get into heaven. And I don't think I'm doing a great job there. Now, as I noted in my breakdown,
of the totem pole.
It's bottom of the totem pole. Now, as I noted, anyone who knows anything about the Bible, which Donald Trump doesn't, but anyone who knows anything about the Bible knows that it's faith, not works. I mean, that's elucidated any number of times. Doesn't mean you can be a terrible person, but ultimately, I think faith is what gets you there. So the works idea is whatever. We can debate that, but. The fact that he, out of the blue, he talks about heaven and he keeps on about it. And they're clearly what the hell is going on? So it's yes, there's a lot of repetition in there, but there is also
that was amazing.
That where you're wait, why is this not getting more coverage? I thought he was in the Ukraine Russia thing because he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize, which I think is part of it. But also he's now equating it to the saving of his immortal soul. That's interesting to me. And so I have
mixed feelings.
Go ahead.
I have mixed feelings about this. I actually think that it's on one level it is it's good that Donald Trump is thinking about his immortal soul, that he's actually thinking about himself as a person. Is he good? Is God, happy with him? That's the good part. The less good part is that perhaps Donald Trump's view of God and what it takes to get into heaven is different than the rest of us, as we've seen in the past.
Totally.
But
my point, though, Charlie, is like I think the Times wrote about it, but like it largely kind of went into the ether, and nobody was like, wait, what? And I just think that happens a lot with him. He says stuff. Because he says so much stuff, and yes, part of this is strategic on his part. We know that, right? It's the Steve Bannon theory. But like,
and it works.
Because he says and does so much stuff, sometimes I like to think we separate the wheat from the chaff, but I don't know that we're doing the best job of separating the wheat from, we collectively as kind of a country and as a media. Because I think sometimes he says stuff where you're like, whoa, let's put a pin in that. Like, rather than getting super exercised over the fact that for the billionth time, and he did this in the Fox and Friends interview, he says they were sending people from prisons, and he said the worst insane asylums. I don't even know what the hell that means, but we fixate on that. And yes, there's no evidence that they were doing that any country was sending us their prisoners or
asylum,
people from there. Exactly. I get that we fixate on that. This is your shiny objects thing, right? It's like, I get that we fixate on that. At the same time, he is saying other stuff that is super interesting that we're probably missing because there's just so much of it. But might be more
that is the problem. And also, I think we just get
numbed.
Yeah, we just get numbed. But on the other hand, I agree with you. I think that if Donald Trump wants to have a national conversation begin about whether or not Donald Trump is going to heaven or hell, I am here for it. I really am.
Totally. And I think that's interesting.
We could have that conversation.
It's a hell of a lot more interesting. Like, for me, it's a hell of a lot more interesting than me going through his speeches, which I do several times a week, and linking to another PolitiFact thing that says absolutely false about him saying that other countries are sending us their worst criminals.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Chris Cillizza, it has been great talking with you. We'll have to do this again soon. I really appreciate all your time.
I love doing it, and I'm a giant Charlie Sykes fan, I think, as you know, but I will say it publicly. I appreciate your work, and I appreciate your willingness to entertain, and I think we all need to do this more, entertain beliefs that are not totally aligned with yours and give them some level of intellectual rigor and thought. I just think you can't criticize people who do that and say we need to do it and then not do it. It's exactly what you've been talking about.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually use a prop here on YouTube. So again, thank you.
I love that.
And thank you all. And thank you all for listening to this episode of To the Contrary podcast. You know why we do this, why we're going to continue to do this, because now more than ever, it is critical, crucial, and absolutely necessary to keep reminding ourselves that we are not the crazy ones. Thank you.